In the previous video, I talked about searching for a lie. I said, come on, search for a lie. If you saw that, maybe you laughed and I put some dramatic music there. However, that had some significant implications. I went on to talk about that how we use not truths often to try to figure out truths. And I wanted to expand on that a little bit more. And if you think about how we get to the truth in this issue of why we're searching for truth, if you think of the game 20 Questions, if you've ever played that game and you have somebody who's out there, right, and they have something in their mind that they're thinking of, and you have to ask questions, and most of your questions are wrong, but you're trying to get there as fast as you can. You try to get there in 5 questions instead of 15. But you're using those things that are false when you get those negative responses to find and get closer to the truth. Scientists do something very similar. We come up with theories. You come up with all sorts of different theories, and then you develop a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is often something you're trying to disprove. And so you use these things to get us closer and closer to what the truth actually is. And that's what I was trying to help people understand. That in our search for truth, a lot of times what we're going to be doing is we're going to then use those things that are false or just don't seem right to help us get closer to what actually is. So then the whole question becomes, why search for truth at all? Why do we even go ahead and search for truth? So when we're talking about that, we often talked about this emotional and intelligent search. We understand that we are a being that has both emotions and intellect. So we have happiness and joy and comfort. And for our intellect, we might have curiosity, we might have pride. So we have these different components and things that will satisfy us that we're looking for. So when we ask, why are we searching for truth? It's usually to satisfy some type of emotional or intellectual need that we have, something that we are trying to fill. And those can come from all sorts of different reasons. They can come from how we grew up and things that happened to us when we were young. They can come out of some desire that we have for either money or power or pride. But when we're searching for truth, it's a little bit different. It's something that we don't always really need. Why is it that we really want truth? Is because we really want something to trust in and believe. You might have a business partner or somebody else that you're working with. But if you can't trust that person, you might recognize that they can make you lots of money or get you the power that you need. But at the same time, you're really uneasy. You don't trust or believe in that person. And so what we really want is we want something that we can trust in and believe in. And when we're dealing with this issue of our eternal souls, when we're dealing with these issues that are coming forward of death, we have to be able to trust and believe in a being or something, process that's going to be able to get us there. So if we look back at some of these questions that we have, do we search for truth only to satisfy an emotional curiosity? So many people that are in philosophy or highly intellectual will say that people choose religion to satisfy some emotional need. They're looking for security. They're looking for comfort. And that might be true for some people. But should we look down on them? I mean, how many people seek money and finances for some sort of security and comfort? We need food for security and comfort. It's a basic need, and it satisfies an emotional thing. I mean, how many of us like a nice creme brulee or a nice big juicy steak? But, we have these things that we desire. How about for those intellectual people? Do they search for truth for just pure knowledge? And then is that it? If we think about that, not really, right? It's not just for pure knowledge. We don't just take that knowledge and go, yep, I got it. I got that knowledge. No, we're hoping to base some reality on it, some truth. Maybe the scientist is using it to develop a new medication that cures cancer. And the reason they want to cure cancer is because their mother died of cancer when they were 12 years old. They're doing it for society. They're doing it for comfort and to help other people. See, our intellectual curiosities aren't just for pure intellect. There's usually some emotional desire underneath, some type of belief or trust as well. And so when we go through these processes, we need to be able to understand that those things are highly intertwined. So, how about if we then have these truths that we think that we've found? Will we defend the truth? That's a really good question. Will we defend the truth that we think we found? Will we argue for it? Will we argue for our theory of what we think the truth is? And is any truth that you won't defend or argue for really a truth? And if we're talking about God and we're talking about death, those are even more important truths than if we're just talking about whether this insect has 8 legs or 6 legs or whatever. I mean, you can kind of count those. But you understand what I'm saying, right? That's something that we really don't worry about. There's an anthill, and whether they're led by this pheromone or another pheromone, sure, some scientists are going to argue about, but that doesn't really apply to everybody in this world. But death is something that we all care about. Can competing truths exist? Can we have two truths that are absolutely opposed and both be true? So can you say for the ant, one person says this chemical definitely causes communication, and this person says, no, that exact same chemical does not cause it. Only one is right. And if somebody says that there's no life after death and somebody says there is life after death, only one is right. So these truths are very, very important that we're dealing with and we have to come to an understanding of. So when we search for truth, we're trying to understand something. Let me give you another example of why truth matters. So in our previous little book, we talked about the airline mechanics, and it's basically like a little Hindu proverb. There's these blind men, and these blind men go up, and there's 5 of them, so they all go up and touch this thing. And they put their hands on it, and they're rubbing all over it, and they're blind, and they can't see, and they're just like, what is this? And one of them says, well, this is clearly a wall. And another one goes, no, this is a snake. And another one, no, it's a tree. No, this is a rope. And another one, no, it's a fan. That's what this is, it's a fan. And they start arguing back and forth and this and that. And they all can't agree. And so what the argument is truth is subject to each person's individual perceptions of a reality. The issue is, the reality is that it's actually, they're touching an elephant. That's the reality. So even though their truths may differ and their perspectives may differ, they're actually touching the same thing. So truth matters when we're dealing with things. And the hard thing is that for humans, a lot of times we're just each touching some aspect of the universe. We're touching some aspect of ultimate reality. So when we talk about that we're seeking truth, what is it that we really desire? For me, I really desired the truth about death. And the reason I really desired the truth about death is because by the time I was 10 years old, 3 of my grandparents had died. And so this was something that was important to me that I understood at a young age. And when I was 13, I felt like I almost died. I had to go undergo surgery. And so this was something that was really important to me. There was an emotional thing. So I had an intellectual curiosity. I wanted to know it, but there was an emotional reason behind it too. And so if we don't grapple with both of those, then are we really coming to an understanding of why we're searching for truth? Now, the next issue is how do we go about solving our problems? How do we understand the mysteries about the things that we don't comprehend? So if we talk about these mysteries of the things that we don't comprehend, that's when we get back to that whole idea of theories. We come up with all sorts of different theories about God. You know, in prehistoric times, people would talk about these theories of how fire came about and how the God sent fire down. Or they look out in the universe in the sky and they see that there's a God who oversees Mars and there's a God who oversees the sun. And they'd argue over who these greater gods were. And they'd come up with a whole theory of how the universe came into being. But how do you test that? You can come up with these hypotheses, but how do we test that? How do we know that that's true? Did somebody come down and tell them that this was true? And this is one of the arguments people use to say, well, we can't know truth because we're just guessing. We're the blind people touching the side of the elephant, reaching out there into the skies and making theories. And so that's what we have to grapple with. Are we just coming up with theories? Or is there something we can really know? And why do we really want to know the truth? What is it that we're ultimately seeking? And so what I would say is that we're seeking something called ultimate reality. Now, what is ultimate reality? Ultimate reality is if you took everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. I'm talking about what's actually happening to my voice as it goes through this microphone, and how this video is recording, and what's going on with my sons and daughters and family, and what's going on with your family, and how is your food digesting, and how did the universe come into being? Everything. How is something manufactured? Everything. What we really want to know is, does somebody or something know ultimate reality? Is there something out there? Is there some truth? And when we're looking for things, and we're looking for God, and we're looking for answers about death and evil, we're looking for that ultimate reality. We're looking for that truth about what and how the universe exists and how it came into being. When I talk about searching for ultimate reality, what we're really searching for is we're searching for a being. Why do I say a being? Well, to understand ultimate reality, to know something, and for us to get that information, for us to be able to actually receive it, we have to, that knowledge is not something we're going to be able to figure out. We're never going to be able to go back to the beginning of the universe. We're never going to be able to go inside ourselves, moment by moment, know how our food is digesting and what's going on with this person on the other side of the planet, and to know all of these different competing things. We're never going to be able to know what's on the other side of death unless somebody comes and tells us. Because we're limited to right here, right now. So we need a being that has the intelligence to be able to communicate these things that we don't know. And so what we're really searching for is we're searching for a being, and we term that being God, right? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for this being, and we're using this term God as just kind of a placeholder term. We're using this term to give this being. We could have called this being Sam. We could have called this being Deuce, or whatever you want to use. I'm just coming off of words off the top of my head. But we use God. And this term probably gets overused, kind of like love gets overused, and people almost get tired of hearing it, because I love my hoagie sandwiches and I love this stromboli pizza, right? Just like I love my cat and I love my wife, and love, God, overused terms. But it's what we're using as a placeholder for a being that has the intelligence to communicate the truths of ultimate reality that we don't know. That's what we're looking for. And that's the truth of what we're actually looking for. So, some things that we think we must know about God. So we're going to kind of go through these real quick. So number one, God has to be eternal. And you can argue, and we'll discuss it later. But I'm just going to make my points here, and you can comment below, and I'll say, or wait until a few videos. But God has to be eternal. That means He's going to never die. God must be all-knowing, must know everything that happens. God must be all-powerful. God must be omnipresent. So these are the things that I'm going to suggest that God must be as we go through. Now, I'm outlining them here early so that you kind of understand where I'm going. But I'm not going to take for granted that these things have to be the case. We're going to really explore them, and we're going to really dig down and scratch some surface and do a little bit of digging, right? But number one, eternal. Has to have always existed from the beginning, has to have known how the universe came to be, everything about that. All-knowing, has to know what happens after death, why we die, what's going on with evil, what happens to the tiniest quark that's on the other side of the universe. And to be able to do that, God has to be omnipresent, has to be everywhere. And we're going to deal with how can that work. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how God has to be all-powerful. So those are what we're going to really be looking at. And that's the truth that I'm going to argue for. So why search for truth? What is it we're looking for? We're looking for a being that can answer questions about ultimate reality. And the ultimate reality that I want to know is what happens after death. And you might want to know, why is there evil in the world? Some other person might want to know, why is there injustice? Will there ever be real justice in this world? Right? But these are questions that we're going to have a hard time answering without that type of being. So, thank you very much. Please join me next time. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, comment, like, subscribe. God bless and peace.